with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee. David Tulis.
Herbert Thornberry has filed a case, one of about 20, in the Woodmore bus crash, and it's in the context of the Grant Convalinka law firm, but Herbert Thornberry is a longtime attorney, and he has in his filing, which is similar to that filed in the past day or two by law firm Burke and Burke, the argument about the jurisdiction of the Durham bus and the driver behind the wheel of that motor vehicle involved in transportation. And the jurisdictional question is under what title the accident took place, what title of the law. Now, you say, well, okay, well, all right, that's not a very shocking lead, David. That's not very insightful, but it is partly because of my continuing thinking about and continuing reading in the question about the use of the road. And Mr. Thornberry, in his filing, makes it very clear that the accident that took place that killed 6 children in gruesome deaths and injured others whose wounds are described in great detail by these 2 sets of attorneys. This accident took place in transportation under contract by an employee under Title 55 of the state code, and also under applicable transportation rules out of the federal code. And so the claims are being made for millions of dollars of injuries against the children involved. And if the question, I guess, should be, why are you talking about the legal questions when we want to hear about the damage to these children? MS, a minor, by his parents, the next friend, Sharonda Covington. That is the Burke case, amended class action complaint and jury demand. And then the filing by Herbert Thornberry on behalf of another group, Brian Johnson, best next friend of Ketta Turner, and Ketta Turner individually. So that case by Herbert Thornberry, which is on the circuit court docket, filed on behalf of an individual and then the next friend of that student. And the plaintiffs, those are the plaintiffs, and the defendants are Durham School Services LP, and National Express LLC, and Jonathan E. Walker, the man behind the wheel. And I say man behind the wheel because if you're behind the wheel of a car, it's possible you're acting privately. And I'm trying to think now of all those thousands of Mexicans, Hispanics, Guatemalans, Hondurans, and others who speak the Spanish, the lovely lilting Spanish tongue here in this country, and are poor and hardworking people. They are immigrants, and they face a dreadful exposure on the highways, the free public right-of-ways of the state of Tennessee and other states, traveling as many of them do without a driver license and having just as much as they can get by with on the externals of their car, namely the tag, which if you don't have, you draw suspicion to yourself. If you have a tag that's valid, putting that car into transportation under the title of transportation in the law, though you may just be using it for private purposes. And so you're hoping as the immigrant from Mexico not to be involved in any kind of accident, any kind of mishap or encounter with the officers of the law, right? Whether state troopers or corporation department of police here in Chattanooga or Red Bank. You're hoping not to have any encounter with the sheriff's deputy either, for any matter, because he may suddenly start asking you for your information, ordering you around. And here you are, you barely speak English, though you know all the rules of the road, having traveled in your home country at least once. And so you are in jeopardy, and you feel that as well. So that's one area of the use of the road, one group of people who use the roads, and people such as June Griffin and Arthur J. Hirsch in Lawrence County. These are people who either are under accusation for the exercise of their constitutionally guaranteed right, or they're fearing the same. And your Hispanic population, your immigrants here, are those who dread this kind of encounter. Not the act. They dread the accident, of course. They drive very carefully, very slowly sometimes, but they also dread the encounter with the officer, who is there to enforce what? The officer is there to enforce the legal jurisdiction upon the use of the roads in which Durham School Service, LP, Limited Partnership, and Jonathan E. Walker, an employee and agent thereof, worked for profit, right? They worked for profit and for hire. And so we have these claims being made against these parties in that jurisdiction. And so when I read Herbert Thornberry's work, as I have in the past, and I've noted his explicit placing of the school bus in transportation, and it's important for me to have him do that and to watch him do that because these Mexicans in Chattanooga and Hamilton County are not under that title, right? They're not under that law at all. I would say at all. Legally, they're not at all. And they're not, in fact, drivers. They, in fact, are people using cars. They may be using pickup trucks, minivans for private purposes on the right of way. And you think it's not a big deal, but do you know probably a third of the people on the road don't have insurance as required by the statute? The public, the safety response, the financial accountability provisions of the transportation code, they don't have that. And why? They can't afford it. Do they eat and have medicines, or do they pay $400 every half year for insurance? I have old cars. David Tulis here, Nooga Radio. I'm a thrifty person. I eat my own lunch. I pack my own lunch most days, eat it here in the studio after my show, invite people to come eat with me, to eat in with me, as I did in an email yesterday with Joanna Favors. I'm hoping to chat with her about her future. She's a very interesting woman with a great heart, and she's leaving her post. Well, she's just not seeking re-election to her post in the Tennessee House of Representatives. And so I economize. I drive old cars, and the insurance on an old car may be just $300 every half a year. That's what I pay to Brownie All at State Farm, the local agent over on McCauley. But if you're a poor person, you can't afford that. So you don't have insurance, and there you are, not in that system. You're out of sorts, though you understand yourself to be in transportation. You call yourself a driver. You say that what you're doing is driving, and so you are vulnerable to a presumptive stop, to presumptive claims of jurisdiction upon you, apart from your procedural rights. Right? They can stop you and demand your driver's license without probable cause, virtually, and everyone's used to it. Everyone's used to having that demand made. Cops are used to demanding it just up front. Show me your driver's license, and if you haven't done anything wrong and you're not a suspect, there's no reason that you have to show any ID at all. But if you're in transportation, it's presumed that you have it, and it's presumed that you have to give it, and everybody just goes along with that understanding. Though I think there are reasons, there are ways of seeing around it. Well, this is David Tulis. We are at 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4 high definition, channel 4. Love your neighbor, buy local. That's my argument here. The blogger with the biggest pen. And just briefly, how is it that we have the establishment of this Title 55 in the code applying to Jonathan E. Walker? Well, the crash involves someone in commerce. So what is commerce? Someone involved in transportation. And looking at the Burke and Burke filing, the contractor was an equal partner with the school district in this joint endeavor, and each stood to profit from the cost savings. As such, the school district agreed to give the private contractor an equal voice in any rule, regulation, or policy incidental to the operation of its school buses, but in an effort to ensure that these cost reductions continue, the school district and the contractor created and fostered an atmosphere wherein they were deliberately indifferent to bus drivers' violations, again, of what? The statute, of the very regulations, rules, and policy they have established. So we're talking here about rules and regulations. A defendant, Durham Bus Services, is a Delaware limited partnership with its principal address and place of business at Opus Place in Downers Grove, Illinois. The defendant is licensed to do business in Tennessee and does, in fact, regularly conduct business in Tennessee. So you have a business operation, again, seeking profit on the use of the public's asset. What's that? That's the road, right? The roads belong to the people. through a trust, though in at least some instances the state claims outright fee simple ownership title of property. And I'm not sure where the roads fit in. Does the state hold the roads in trust for the people? In other words, are you a member of the ownership group of the roadways, the people's roads built for their pleasure? Are you a member of the body of people that own those roads, or and the roads are managed and stewarded by the state as a trust, whether an explicit trust or an implicit trust? This is the question. I think I know in some like nuclear waste areas in that part of the statute, the state claims direct ownership of the property in fee simple. As I understand it, that's direct ownership. But what about the roads? Well, here we have a company taking advantage of the people's roads that belong to you. You don't make a profit using the road. You just travel on the road. But Durham made a profit. It was making a profit on the use of that public asset, and so it's subject to regulation. It is involved in a regulable activity, as to use the word in the law. Specifically, defendant Durham operates a full-service student transportation company. Again, notice the language there. This is in the Burke filing. Full-service transportation company that provides school bus services to Hamilton County Department of Education, including Woodmore Elementary. And it's against the suit is against Durham is in its individual capacity. Of course, that means its capacity as a contract, as a corporation. And the lawsuit, the filing by Burke, as I have printed out here, marked up parts of it, paid more than $45 million to provide school bus service to the children of Chattanooga, including students attending Woodmore Elementary. The rules and regulations which defendant jointly promulgated include and are not limited to the Hamilton Board of Education bus rules and the transportation policy of the Hamilton County Board of Education. So we have policies that are, again, commercial impositions on how we're doing this service, right? It is a service for profit. We are going to make a living on it. We're going to use the people's asset. We're not just traveling on the roads. We are driving on the roads. We are making a profit. We are all operators of motor vehicles. Jonathan Walker, the same. Durham and the district, beside their mutually established regulations, rules, and policies, ignored. And here we have again, borrowing from the Burke filing, ignored Jonathan Walker's repeated and flagrant violations of the same, thereby placing the plaintiffs in imminent danger and subjecting them to repeated acts, it says, of physical and mental brutality. And it goes on to say in item 60 in the Burke filing, Durham subjected the elementary school children of bus 366 to Jonathan Walker's repeated and sadistic use of bodily harm, including the fear of death, to control the behavior of his passengers by entrusting bus 366 and its associated route to and from Woodmore Elementary School to Walker every day. And it goes on to say that they were slammed seats into their seats, swerving the bus to make the children fall out of their seats, and employing threats of death and imminent bodily harm, grossly excessive. The suit says it resulted in plaintiff's serious injuries, including death, severed limbs, severe head and spinal injury, and severe emotional trauma. And this is how that language is given in the case. And the lawyers are making very clear that it's under transportation. Now, I raise the question again because it is a kind of a peeve of mine. In the control of travel through the transportation statute is one of the most important operations of what we call the deep state. Now, the deep state is the real government behind the government. Okay, and we look at that because under the rubric commercial government, we look at that because it is a picture of how far we've fallen in our desire to assert our liberty. I've been going through the transportation code line by line in the past weeks. I'm promising to give an hour a day to that project, and I came across this a couple days ago. Obedience to police officers. Now here we have an officer who says he can order you to do whatever he wants, right? And you can say, well, why? Lie on the ground. You're a pregnant woman. We're reading a story about a woman who is thrown down by an officer. Though she's pregnant, he brutalizes her. She's 8 months with a child in womb. Charlena Michelle Cook in Barstow, California, and she doesn't show her ID, and she's thrown to the ground. Unbelievable. She's having a dispute in a parking lot, a private piece of private property, with another person in a car, and the officer gives her an order, and she doesn't immediately comply. Though there's no underlying charge, he throws her down, demands her ID. And in Tennessee, in Title 55, again, that's the transportation code, we have the following. It's called obedience to police officers. And I think you'll only look at this law carefully if you care about being a slave and living in fear. Okay, if you care about that, you'll look at it and think about it. And if you don't care, it won't matter to you a bit. And you probably should be listening to some music on one of our fine competitors here on the radio market in Chattanooga. We, of course, are 92.7 FM, the all-talk station. David Tulis here on the morning, giving the morning news analysis. And we are 92.7 FM, 95.3 HD4. And also, just by the way, live on Facebook. All of our shows are always live on Facebook. And if it's a live show with a real person behind the mic, that's me, David Tulis. Just watch me. Nooga Radio on Facebook. Nooga Radio, do like us. Like us on Facebook. Like us on Facebook. Here it says, no person shall willfully fail or refuse to comply with any lawful order or direction of any police officer invested by law with authority to direct, control, or regulate traffic. And if you do, it's a misdemeanor. Now, the question is this. Okay, first of all, willfully fail or refuse to comply. Now, again, willful is intentional. Okay, that's very important. You can't willfully fail to do something or refuse to comply with a lawful order. Now, the question I have is, I make note of this with my pen and yellow marker, is what is a lawful order? Does that mean an order that's in the code itself that can be cited? Or does it simply mean, roll down your window? Let's say you don't want to, let's say the cop says, roll down all your windows. And cops do that because they want to create a cross breeze so that they can allege that they smell marijuana. Okay, that's why they do that. You'll have one on one side, one on the other, and you're told to lower your windows. Well, they do that again so that they can accuse you falsely of a marijuana, so they can have a DUI bust. And let's say you refuse to comply with that order. Is it a lawful order? Well, maybe. All right. Let's pretend it is a lawful order, and let's say you only want it to go down, the window only to go down an inch and a half, because you can hear him, he can hear you, and you don't want it to be down anymore because you don't want him climbing into your car, right? So you want to keep him out. And or direction of any officer invested by law with the authority to direct, control, or regulate traffic. Now, the question, I guess, is if he has authority to regulate traffic, to direct it and control it, is telling you to lower your window part of that, or is that beyond it? Well, actually, I'd say it's beyond, because having your window down, or if you're told to lie down on the ground, or put your phone down, put your phone down, stop taping me. Let's say he says that. You have a right to make a videotape or an audio tape. Let's say he orders you to put your phone down because you're prohibited by law from doing that. Let's say he lies about the state of the law to you, as cops will do. Police will lie to you. Okay, you're under an obligation to not lie to them, but they are under no obligation to not lie to you. So you just need to be careful. And is it a lawful order to put your phone down? Can he now arrest you because you disobeyed a lawful order? Well, that he'll say yes, and he's going to threaten you and bully you with the threat. It's a threat that will not be sustained, but you've got someplace to go. You're under pressure to get home, right? You told your wife you'd be there at 6:30, and here it is, 5:45, and it's going to take you 20 minutes to get home because you have a date, or you're going to meet some people for dinner. And you don't want to be late, so he has that working in his advantage, and you have it working against you. Well, okay, again, the law says no person shall willfully fail or refuse to comply with any lawful order. Okay, lawful, put a circle around that, or direction of any police officer invested by law with authority to direct, I put a square around these words, direct, control, or regulate traffic. So he has authority in anything pertaining to the directing, controlling, and regulating traffic. Put your camera down. Is that part of controlling, regulating, or directing traffic? Well, he would say, since I'm involved in a traffic stop, that's part of it. You could say, well, that has nothing to do with traffic. That's a personal command that I don't have to obey. And the fact that he's charged me and abused me is indefensible, and I have a defense. I would say there's a defense in the law, but it seems a little ambiguous. Well, this is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me a minute of your time. We are going to talk about all those people who are traveling on the roads illegally, as they say, who are exercising a constitutionally guaranteed right, subject to prosecution by the Highway Patrol, subject to prosecution by misdirected city corporation officers. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's News Talk